let's see. This is me tweeting. Well, oh, hey, sorry. I was tweeting on the Mana Source Twitter account because we're on Twitter and you can follow us on Twitter. Hey everyone, my name is Wedge, and this week we have something special, another budget deck tech. This time we're giving you another take on the aggro strategy, Blue-Green Evolve. Going in, we knew this was going to be a weird theme to tackle for a variety of reasons. It took a couple of iterations to find the right mix of effective creature curving and interesting interactions. We played around with a couple different builds that included cards like Aetherling and Fated Intervention. While those interactions were cute when they worked, more often than not they were clunky and not worth the mana. Our end result is a kit full of aggressive creatures, most of which evolve and can trigger something else to evolve, especially if you hit your curve just right. So let's start at 1 and go right on up the curve. Our two 1-drops are full sets of the two Evolve 1-drops, Experiment 1 and Cloudfin Raptor. If you have both in your opening hand, and you have the luxury of either color or mana, drop the Raptor first. Its evasion means it's a bit more valuable on the attack, and if you can't come through with the 2-drop, the Experiment evolves the Raptor. At 2, you usually want to hit a Gyre Sage, which is why we included 4 of it. Shamble Shark, a 3 of at the 2 spot, isn't bad in a pinch, since it evolves any of the other 1 or 2 drops in the deck, and even one of the 3 drops. But getting a Gyre Sage out ASAP and evolving it early and often does wonders for your flexibility on later turns. You'll understand why when we start getting further up in the curve. Our 3-drops are also powerful evolvers. Elusive Krasis can trigger a first or second evolution out of any other evolved creature in the deck. What's more, once you drop it, it sits around collecting counters from almost everything else in the deck, building up a clock that demands an answer. The other 3-drop is Renegade Krasis. You'd think a 3-2 for 3 in a green deck is nothing to write home about. A 3-2 for 3 that continuously pumps most of your other creatures, by contrast, is a much better deal. From 0 counters, it'll evolve by means of any subsequent on-curve creature drop. Even its fellow 3-drop, Elusive Krasis, nets it a trigger. Here's a tip to make sure you get the most out of its other ability. Whenever Renegade Krasis evolves at the same time as other creatures, make sure you put its evolve trigger on the stack first, followed by all the others. That way they all finish resolving their own evolve triggers before Renegade Krasis gives them more counters. If you resolve Renegade Krasis' trigger first, the other creatures' evolve abilities might not resolve as planned. We only have one 4-drop, and that's a playset of Crown Ceratok. It's a 4-3, so it'll evolve most anything else you've dropped by this point. And anything that has evolved, it gives Trample, along with anything else that has +1/+1 counters on it. As you'll see with our remaining creatures, that means it can give everything else in the deck Trample. And the creatures in this deck can easily get big enough for Trample to be relevant. At 5, we have 2 Arbor Colossus. This guy is seriously great for building green-centric decks on a budget, as you might remember from the last time we built a budget deck with green in it. As a 6/6 for 5 mana, he's mana efficient and capable of evolving anything that needs it by turn 5 or 6. What's more, his monstrosity ability gives him +1/+1 counters, giving him a couple other fun interactions in the deck, and it gives you some anti-flying hate. Our last creature is a 3 of Mistcutter Hydra. It has a combination of abilities that sticks it to some of the top decks in the format. Beyond even that, it's flexible enough that it can be an extra evolve enabler at any point in the game. There may be situations where you want to just drop this guy on turn 4 with 3 counters, evolve your guys, and swing out, though I wouldn't recommend dropping him much earlier. That possibility is why we have 3 of the Hydra and only 2 Arbor Colossus, though we could easily see switching the numbers as you see fit. And keep in mind that Mistcutter Hydra also runs off 1/1 counters, which gives it synergy with a couple of our other niche cards. Our only sorcery is the split card Give and Take, of which we're running 3. Let me level with you for a minute. In an actual game, you're going to be losing some creatures to removal, so even after a few turns of rushing the board, you might not have enough power to finish the job. That's where the spell comes in. The give half is pretty redundant except in a pinch, giving something 3+1/+1 counters in a deck already focused around stacking up counters. The take side is what we're interested in. Drop all the 1/1 counters off of something you control and draw that many cards. If you dropped a huge Mistcutter Hydra that's not getting the job done, turn him into cards. Gyre Sage getting bloated and you have more than enough mana? Float the mana, then cash him in for draws. Got a monstrous Arbor Colossus and no need for a 9-power body? Draw cards instead. Just remember that even after you take his counters off, he's still monstrous and can't become monstrous again. Or for even more fun, reset a Renegade Krasis back to a 3/2. You get to draw some cards which you can use to evolve the weakened Krasis, which lets you put more counters on all your other guys. That's just good value. Next comes the land base. Normally when building 2-color mana on a budget, the guild gates are godsends. In this case, however, you really need to hit your curve and can't afford the extra turn waiting for a gate to untap. Fortunately though, the deck runs mostly on green mana with relatively few blue cards and nothing that requires 2 blue symbols. We ran some tests and came back with 16 forests and 9 islands as a good number of lands. That's a solid combination of colors to get you blue when you need it without depriving you of green for costs like Arbor Colossus. Remember that Gyre Sage also gives you green mana. You can build that entire main deck for $40, and frankly, with such a sensitive creature curve, making a sideboard can be tough. That said, we have some recommendations depending on what you actually expect to play the deck against. Running as many Mistcutter Hydras as it takes to complete a playset with the ones in the main deck is a great idea with the amount of blue in Standard right now. Something as simple as Mending Touch might be worthwhile if you expect to run into sweepers. Being able to save a Gyre Sage out from under a Supreme Verdict can really help you get back on your feet. Simic Charm is a solid inclusion for its hexproof granting mode against spot removal heavy strategies like mid-range. And if you run up against something that you just need to kill, like say a Pelucranos before it goes monstrous, Pit Fight can help you out there if you can get a creature big enough. Unravel the Aether is a good idea, since it gets around gods like no one's business. And even Sylvan Primordial can help get rid of pesky non-creatures. For instance, Planeswalkers, if the ever-popular punch them in the face until their run-away strategy fails. 7 mana may seem like a lot, but Gyre Sage can ramp up surprisingly fast. And we'll never stop recommending Pithing Needle for sideboards. It's cheap and it shuts down Planeswalkers, Pack Rats, Aetherlings, and anything else with an activated ability. We hope you enjoyed this budget deck tech. What kind of changes would you make to the deck? We're always interested to hear what you guys have to say. Also, how are you liking the budget deck techs? We're trying to find a healthy balance between budget deck techs and normal ones, so any constructive criticism is greatly appreciated. As always, subscribe below for the latest and most reliable Magic the Gathering information you could ever need. This is the Mana Source. I'm Wedge. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.